Well, hello, good evening, and welcome to episode 65 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, tonight's going to be a very interesting show for a number of reasons, not least because I've got a box of grenades down here, and I'm going to be lobbing them a few, well, metaphorically, over my shoulder here. And 3 weeks ago, I had Mel Kelly as my guest on the show. And we really set off a few fireworks in Scotland. And, God forbid that anybody dares challenge Saint Nicola Sturgeon, or the SNP. The political euphoria in Scotland is almost something you have to sort of cut through. But nonetheless, we asked some pertinent questions, and those questions are now being asked by the media in Scotland. Not least the issue of Scottish water, which it seems that the people of Scotland wish to simply bury their heads in the sand and deny the fact that Nicola Sturgeon has effectively committed treachery by selling Scotland's water supply to Westminster. Sounds far-fetched? Well, hang on, because later on in the show I'm going to be joined by Mel Kelly and we'll be discussing this in greater detail. Coupled with which, on Sunday, I will be joining Mel and Pippa King for an event. Now, originally, this was going to be an alternative view event. Well, it's still an alternative view event, but this is an AV-free event. So this is the first AV event where entrance has been free to all. And this will run from 11 o'clock till 6 o'clock on Sunday at the Thistle Hotel at 36 Cambridge Street in Glasgow. And the subtitle of the event, which is called Fracked, Tracked and Hacked, is Scotland becoming a totalitarian police state? And we will be looking at the way in which the SNP are at the forefront of the surveillance and tracking agenda in the UK, at the forefront in establishing state governance over children, at the forefront in pushing unconventional gas via underground coal gasification, and also looking, of course, at the water issue. So anyone who really wants to get the full Monty should come along to the Thistle Hotel on Friday. There's no registration. You come along, and it will be done on a first-come, first-served basis, but it's a sizable venue, and I think you're going to find that it's a very interesting day. And I do want to stress that every one of the speakers is pro-Scottish independence. So this isn't an independence issue. This is about raising awareness amongst the Scottish people of an agenda to bring about totalitarian control. So more of that in the second part of the show, when I will be bringing Mel Kelly into the discussion. Now, every now and again, it becomes necessary to raise some pretty tough issues. And of course, in the interests of solidarity and unity, it's very difficult to discuss issues arising within the anti-fracking community. But sometimes it becomes absolutely necessary. When all other avenues have been explored and have failed to make any kind of headway, then it becomes necessary to put it into the public domain and hope that things can be resolved. Now, 2 weeks ago, there was a meeting held in the north of England with representatives from East Yorkshire, North Yorkshire, South Yorkshire, Greater Manchester, and Lancashire and Liverpool, and a few from elsewhere in the country, who had met to discuss a number of issues and certainly some concerns about some things that were unfolding on the periphery of the anti-fracking community. And one of those issues was this. It was a website that had appeared, waxing lyrical about the Safe Alliance. The Safe Alliance. And the individuals who were associating themselves with this were listed on the front page here, and a brief bio attached. Now, there were some questions about the goals and objectives, some very reasonable questions, primarily because the Safe Alliance were looking to tap into the wider anti-fracking community for funding at a time when the funds were already being sought for support of the judicial review for Rossiter in Lancashire, and also to establish a fighting fund for Preston New Road. Now, the Rossiter Fund was looking for £10,000, and which it met that at 7.5 through the crowdfunding, and then a benefactor came forward to make up the difference. The Preston New Road Fund, which is seeking 15,000, at the last look, had about 235 in the account. So, Preston New Road obviously needs some funds to support their opposition to Quadrilla's appeal against the Lancashire County Council decision. Well, listed as the Alliance's key messages were safety. Our objective is safety, rationality. The Safe Alliance is a rational response to the available evidence. And then finally, clarity and transparency. We have a right to clarity and transparency. Well, that was absolutely the view amongst those who had gathered in the north of England to address this issue. And it was agreed that questions would be asked, valid questions would be put to the people behind the Safe Alliance, and once the responses were obtained, then obviously those responses could be shared. Now, some people had tried to get responses through the email address on the Safe Alliance website, but those responses weren't forthcoming. And then earlier this week, a private message Facebook thread kicked off, and these people participated in that thread from the Safe Alliance. There's Emily, who is a non-practicing barrister, who is part of the Safe Alliance, and then Geza Tarjani, also known as Geza Frackman, and Elizabeth Thompson. And one of the concerns that was raised was whether or not the Safe Alliance was actually looking to drive towards a total outright ban on unconventional gas extraction in the UK, or it was a pro-regulation agenda. Well, I'm pleased to say that the terminology on the website has been modified because by their own admission it was a little ambiguous, and so the cause for concern was indeed valid. But now that it's very clear, it says, what do we consider safe regulations for fracking? Well, it says our view is that there would be no safe regulations for fracking. However, the government is in the process of drafting safe regulations. This is another possible area of challenge. SAFE believes that fracking cannot be made safe by regulation. They go on, are we pushing for safer regulation or an all-out ban on fracking? We are seeking an outright ban on fracking because it is unsafe through using available legal routes to challenge the root causes of the government's dash for gas approach. SAFE is pushing for legal action to stop fracking taking place and supports other forms of action to stop fracking and an all-out ban. Well, that's pretty unequivocal, but like I said, it wasn't quite so unequivocal first time round, which led to the questions. Also on the website is this statement on transparency of interests and avoiding sleaze. And of course, this is absolutely crucial. And the comment here is a full review is required to establish transparency of interests and take action against apparent conflicts of interest within and between industry and government. Well, of course, that same level of transparency absolutely must apply within the anti-fracking community. And sadly, as this thread was unfolding earlier in the week, it became apparent that those who were purporting to represent SAFE were being somewhat less than transparent. And in fact, the responses to some very reasonable questions were met with outright avoidance and obfuscation. Emily decided to leave the thread relatively early on, leaving Elizabeth Thompson to try and address the questions, which sadly she singularly failed to do so, and then handed over to Geza Tarjani, whose first contribution to this thread was a threat. And without any previous submission, he writes, face to face, anytime, Ian, about time we exposed you, where and when. And then his second post, where and when, and we will record time to get to the truth. I have no time for people who are not on side. Well, sadly, I mean, this is a tactic that is often used by people who unfortunately have something that they wish to hide. because rather than respond to the questions, because they don't have the answer or don't want to give the answer, they go on the attack. So obviously I have to ask the question, why is it that Geza Tarjani feels so aggressive, feels the need to be so aggressive? And by the way, I will acknowledge that I am not being singled out here, because he does seem to apply similar behaviour to other people who, for whatever reason, refuse to adopt the Geza Tarjani worldview, which has proven at times to be somewhat myopic. Well, up until earlier this year, in fact late January, I had absolutely no issue with Geza, and as far as I'm aware, he had no issue with me. But things seemed to change when I refused to simply roll over and accept that Mike Hill, who was standing as an independent candidate for election at the May elections, had had a Damascus moment and was all of a sudden an anti-fracking campaigner, when in fact, for the last few years and to date, everything that Mike Hill has ever written is about pro-regulation. Well, Mike Hill certainly made an impression at the election. He polled 5,000 votes, but the statistics from the returning officer are very interesting, because it seems that Mike Hill actually outspent his nearest rival by over 2,000%. In fact, a total of 2,766%. And as we can see again from the statistics here, Mike Hill's election campaign effectively paid £5.89 for every single poll that he received during the election. And as you can see, his campaign here, his campaign fund mounted to more in total than all of the other candidates put together, for which he was able to poll just over 5,000 votes. Now, Mr. Tarjani certainly defends Mike Hill, and also makes the claim that Mike Hill has invested much of his own money and has lost business as a result of his efforts to campaign for pro-regulated fracking. Well, I did post this before the election, so I'm not actually posting anything new here, but the accounts submitted to Companies House for Mike Hill's business, Gemini Control and Automation, tell a rather different story, because Gemini Control and Automation actually literally just ticked over until 2012, and then all of a sudden the revenues really took off. And in fact, the available cash went from £5,000 in 2010 to £13,000 in 2011, £11,000 in 2012, up to £90,000 in 2013, up to £155,000 in 2014. And this, of course, coincides with the period when Mike Hill was campaigning, allegedly against the industry, to try and achieve properly regulated fracking. Now, after the election, Mike Hill announced that he was going to retire and sell up and move with his family into the Lake District. Well, a few weeks ago, Mike Hill reappeared, and this was in the Blackpool Gazette, and it said, "Protesters to form a united fracking front." And here was his press release. "Anti-fracking campaigners on the file have been urged to come together to provide a united front against energy company Quadrilla's planning appeal. Lytham engineer Mike Hill has urged all the various groups to coordinate their actions and is staging a forum back in earlier September in Squires Gate." But you know, Mike Hill is an absolutely determined pro-regulation fracker, and everything. And I challenge anybody watching this program to come up with any statement Mike Hill has ever made about being anti-fracking. I mean, here's a classic. This is from The Statesman. And it says, Hill has delivered talks at academic conferences on shale gas, and he also advises, etc. He refuses to join RAF, and he's not anti-fracking. He says just pro-regulation. So you know, there it is, black and white, pro-regulation. And Mike Hill, and again, this is a matter of public record, has actually written to Mark Miller of Quadrilla. And although he claims this isn't a job application, I'll leave it on screen for a few minutes. And when you read through it, this was written on the 4th of March 2013, and it certainly looks like a job application, basically. So we got Mike Hill, who is clearly pro-regulated fracking. And we have Geyser Tajani, who would appear to have developed a tremendous degree of animosity towards anybody who refuses to buy into his perception of Mike Hill. So whilst I have never had any cause to question Geyser Tajani's commitment to anti-fracking, one has to ask for full transparency, because at the meeting it was mooted by some people from Lancashire that there was suspicion that Geyser Tajani was actually being funded by Mike Hill. And if that is the case, then we have a bit of an issue here, because, you know, Geyser is obviously campaigning on the back of an anti-fracking ticket. But if he's receiving payment for his activities from a committed pro-regulation campaigner, then there's a little bit of a disconnect here. So whatever it is, Geyser Frackman, Geyser Tajani, whatever it is that you wish to expose, then, you know, I'm quite happy for you to do so, whatever it may be. But in the meantime, I think that you owe the people of the Fylde an explanation. You have also been taking credit for the result in Lancashire, and there's no question you were a contributory factor. You put in a lot of effort, but so did a lot of other people. And there's many people on the Fylde Peninsula who feel that you are being somewhat disingenuous by refusing to acknowledge their contribution and effectively alluding that you were the architect to the DCC decision. Now, coupled with which, you also claimed that you were partly responsible for Total announcing that they were withdrawing from Denmark. Now, in reality, and we have corroborated the facts here, you did indeed participate in a meeting with a Danish lawyer, and coincidentally, 48 hours later, Total announced that they were withdrawing from Denmark. But it's a bit of excessive self-grandisement to be claiming that that meeting was instrumental in Total pulling out of Denmark. And you know, I'm sure that the meeting was extremely valuable, but you know, let's put a few things in perspective. I'm pleased to say that earlier today I had the opportunity, thanks to a mutual friend, that being Vanessa Vine, who has hosted this show before, and Vanessa coordinated a conversation with Steve Charter, who's one of the prime movers behind the Safe Alliance. And you know, Steve has acknowledged that this has been a bit of a learning experience for him, and he has committed to undertake the appropriate due diligence to ensure that everyone that is associated with Safe Alliance is absolutely buying into their ideals and their ethos, and also to ensure that whatever is published on the Safe Alliance website also represents the ideals and the objectives of the Alliance. And of course, the key issue here, anyone is entitled, of course, it is their prerogative to launch initiatives. But of course, when they seek funding from the already overstretched anti-fracking community, then obviously questions have to be asked. And as it says on the front of their website, transparency is absolutely a key element, and I couldn't agree more. So with that, and I'm absolutely sorry that we had to go through that, but sometimes you have to do these things to clear the air and be able to move forward, because this was something that was clearly festering and it wasn't going to come to a head. Everyone, or certainly from the individuals I've mentioned, was obfuscating and trying to avoid actually getting into any meaningful debate So here we go. There's the grenade. We'll see where it lands. So second part, we're going to be joined by Mel Kelly, and we're going to be talking about the amazing successes that are being achieved by the community in Scotland, just like the amazing successes that are being achieved all around the country by communities. And this is the crucial element. There is no individual, there is no small group of individuals that has the divine solution here. This is about communities working together, and anybody that isn't working towards nurturing or supporting local communities in their fight against the unconventional gas industry, you have to question what their ulterior motives really are. See you in part 2.
The Alternative View Conference. The AV6 DVD collection. Enjoy 13 fantastic presentations on 12 discs from some of the best researchers in their fields.
What a weekend, hey? What a weekend, what a range of speakers, what a hard bunch of acts to follow, really. I've heard some of the most important information here today, really, because honestly, I've spoken at a lot of gigs, and I'd say this is the best gig that I've spoken at.
These unique presentations are essential viewing for all those who have the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and who are now ready to participate in bringing about the changes that we all know we need to see. AV6. 12 discs in 2 volumes. Order now from ukcolumn.org. AV Events, taking positive activism to the next level.
And welcome back to part 2 of Fracking Nightmare. Now, obviously, we're going to change gear, having got that unfortunate business out of the way. And we're going to be looking at the unfolding situation in Scotland. Now, 3 weeks ago, when Mel Kelly joined us, this is the graphic that is up on YouTube to promote that particular episode of Fracking Nightmare. And it really set the cat amongst the pigeons, because I think we probably had equal amounts of hate mail, and from those people who said, oh, thank goodness somebody's had the courage to raise this issue, because every time I try and raise this issue in Scotland, I'm immediately shut down with how dare I challenge Nicola, or how dare I challenge the SNP. So what was the reaction that you were getting from your fellow countrymen, Mel?
Like yourself, it was very mixed, but most of it was positive. Most people were saying thanks very much for giving us the information. We had no idea. People have been asking for the reports, and there has been, just last week, a group has been set up within the SNP party of ordinary members demanding that the leadership stop sitting on the fence, give an outright ban on fracking, and include UCG in the moratorium and get that banned too.
Yeah, and in fact, it goes way beyond just the SNP, because, and this is a report from the Herald just a few days ago, Sturgeon under cross-party fire over fracking. And of course, this all stems back to her duplicity on the day, on the morning, which she, or sorry, her, is it Fergus Ewing? On the morning that Fergus Ewing announced the moratorium on unconventional gas exploitation, although excluding underground coal gasification. And of course, Nicola Sturgeon met with Jim Ratcliffe, the CEO of INEOS. And as we discussed, Jim Ratcliffe, of course, then subsequently told the press that as far as he was concerned, the SNP didn't have a problem with unconventional gas exploitation. And this is what has put the cat amongst the pigeons. And I do believe that Nicola Sturgeon and the SNP have now been requested to produce the minutes of the meeting that she had with Jim Ratcliffe, and is refusing to do so.
They have provided the Glasgow Herald, which has been doing a fantastic job, with heavily redacted version of the minutes where the SNP have blanked out much of it, and claimed that it's not in the public interest for the Scottish public to know exactly what was said.
And of course, anytime there's a redacted report, that basically means that the report doesn't say what the government wants it to say, or it will be caught in the lie. And so they get out the black marker.
Yeah, they get out the black marker to say, let's hide the inconvenient truth that we don't want the public to know.
So the situation right now, and I mean, this is, I made this statement, and but the reality is that with the Scottish Nationalist Party conference coming up in October, if the SNP do not adopt a motion to implement an outright ban on all unconventional gas exploitation, then I think we can pretty much take it as a given that the SNP have every intention of lifting the moratorium after the May elections next year.
Well, that's what Clough and Ineos seem to allude to. And on top of that, since we spoke, Nicola has announced that she is going to, like David Cameron, streamline the planning process. Now, what she actually says, she likes to talk about it's all about housing. But when anybody starts talking about streamlining planning process, always seems to come along when frackers are looking to frack your country. So not only is Nicola, it would appear the water laws and the planning laws have all been planned well in advance to be changed in Scotland, all to suit fracking. And Nicola now wants to say, vote for me, and then after you give me your trust, then I'll change the planning laws. I won't tell you about the water law changes I've made, where Nicola has put a water curfew on the entire Scottish economy, including whisky and farmers, even farming livestock. But frackers have got complete diplomatic immunity. So animals in Edinburgh Zoo and the livestock in the farms in Scotland have to have no water for life, but frackers are to have water for life. And Nicola even tried to use national security to stop the Glasgow Herald publishing the fact that the SNP lambasted the whisky industry, the farming community, and golf courses, except for Donald Trump because he didn't produce his figures, for using more water than the SNP ruled in 2013 with a new law that they were allowed to use. So the entire Scottish economy is to be sacrificed on the altar of SNP's desire for unconventional gas in Scotland, where whisky industry can't use water, put limits on it, but frackers have no limits. So is that the actions of a party that don't support fracking?
Oh, absolutely. This is a headline, actually, that I think was also in the Herald. Golf courses and whisky firms breach water rules. And basically, obviously, what this is acknowledging is that they were rationed effectively. And am I right in saying that last year Scotland had a higher rainfall than any year on record?
Yep, basically records have been kept for 104 years. So the SNP say in 2013, the whisky industry and farmers and the entire Scottish economy is under water limits, except for the hydroelectric industry, fish farming operations, which covers all of it, but farmers are only allowed to use water unlimited for horticulture and crop irrigation, but they can't clean or they can't give their livestock water. That's limited. And mining, gold mining, underground coal gasification, open cast coal mining, fracking, and coal bed methane are all exempt. So the entire Scottish economy, their water is to be sacrificed so that but not only so that frackers in Scotland can use unlimited water, but they did a deal with David Cameron behind our back during the referendum to create a UK water market while they claim they want to split from the UK, where the 2005 Act can be used and Scotland's water will now be pumped to fracking areas in England, and this deal means by 2019 Scottish Water will not receive a penny. So Scottish economies to be denied access to water. Scottish householders could be denied access to water, because water, they say, is for life, but it's for life for frackers, but the rest of us have to get no access.
So what we're seeing here is actually, the irony is that this is an integral part of Agenda 21, where the corporations actually have priority over everything. So what Nicola Sturgeon has effectively implemented is the equivalent of much of the Halliburton loophole, where the unconventional gas industry, but in this case, actually all industry in Scotland, but I think we can pretty safely ascertain that Nicola Sturgeon has every intention of not passing a motion against unconventional gas extraction in the forthcoming party conference. She has every intention of lifting the moratorium the moment, or certainly not long after, she takes office, assuming, of course, that she gets the expected outright majority. And at that point, the unconventional gas industry literally has total exemption, diplomatic immunity over how much water it abstracts and what it does with the waste.
Yep. So the situation is so bad. Forgive me for a moment I give you this quote from the chairman of Scottish Water. But he's actually confirmed that Scottish Water could disappear altogether. That business stream, if it loses all its customers, will disappear. So that means private English water companies get all the money for Scotland's water revenues in Scotland. But they've included our water in a new Cameron's Westminster water market, where Scotland's water is not only to face competition at retail, but at a wholesale level. Now, the chairman of Scottish Water said to the Scottish Parliament in 2011 that basically the retail market could mean that the new private water company within Scottish Water could go bust, go out of business altogether. But it's okay. Scotland's public water company, Scottish Water, can still get all the wholesale revenues. In fact, the deal that Nicola Sturgeon and Alex Salmond did with Cameron during the referendum behind our back, they agreed that Scottish Water will have to face competition at the wholesale level too. So the 2005 Act, where they created the private water market in Scotland, allows them to pump Scotland's water down to England. Now the deal they did with Cameron means that Scottish Water will get no money eventually for any of the water, retail or wholesale. So that means basically every householder in Scotland is left funding the entire water and sewerage infrastructure for the whole of Scotland. And the Scottish Water has said in their 2015-21 plan that as a result of this deal between the SNP and David Cameron, every Scottish household water bill is at risk, despite the assurances on the main section of their plan that don't worry, we're limiting increases. Buried deep in the indexes page, it tells you that every householder's water bill will have to increase because Scotland's water revenues and its water will go to England and Scottish Water will be bankrupted. And they're very clever with their words. Fork-tongued politicians, we will not privatise Scottish Water. Now that's the company they're talking about. They've no intention of privatising it because they intend to bankrupt it.
Mm-hmm.
But they never say we will not privatise Scotland's water. Now, if you read it in print, Scottish Water with capitals at each word, you know they mean the company. But when they say we won't privatise Scottish Water, they know the people think they mean Scotland's water. Scotland's water, through the SNP, has been sold down the river. They've left Scotland up the creek without a paddle because by 2019, every penny for Scotland's water will not go to the company, the public company Scottish Water. It will be going into the private water company's coffers in England.
So, I mean, basically, this is so staggering, which is why there was such a reaction when, I mean, we just touched on it 3 weeks ago, but there was such a phenomenal reaction because there is no public awareness of this whatsoever. And, both you and I received many, many emails saying, where's the evidence? Where's the evidence? Show us the evidence. Well, on Sunday, at the Thistle Hotel, at the event, you are going to present the definitive evidence to show that Nicola Sturgeon and SNP either knowingly... Now, I mean, let's just ask the question. Is there a possibility that they were just so naive that they were totally stitched up by Westminster in this process and they didn't realise what they were signing off? Is that a possibility?
Not at all. Basically, David Cameron produced a document called Water for Life, and that document stated that the water in the British economy is basically for the economy. It's not for life. It's not for people. It's not for animals. It's basically for frackers. And the SNP had this hydronation document where Alex Salmond said he wants to commercialise Scotland's water. He just left out the fact that he wants private English water companies and hedge funds to be the people that get the money for the commercialised Scotland's water. And they introduced the 2005 bill where they said, we're creating a private water market in Scotland while they're telling Scotland's people Scotland's water will not be privatised. And they gloat, we're the first country in the world to do this. But they did it by stealth. The Scotland's people don't know. They put the bill in 2005. It doesn't come into effect to 2008. They've done the same with this deal with Cameron, where this new UK-wide water market between Scotland and England and Wales, that's seamless. It's all one big UK market. When the SNP saying they want to split for the UK, they create a UK market weeks before the referendum. And in Nicola's words, when she transferred power to allow David Cameron to change Scottish law to achieve this, Nicola said this is a joint objective between the SNP and the Westminster Parliament. Nicola's words in the document that she lodged in the Scottish Parliament. And when I challenged her, she refused to answer questions. I challenged her further 2 SNP ministers again to the face. They too refused to answer it. It's their flagship policy with David Cameron. So why does Nicola and the SNP ministers and leadership refuse to answer questions? How can Alex Salmond sit in Westminster? Basically what they did was made a mockery of the referendum, doing a deal with David Cameron over Scotland's water. We want to split from the UK, but we're creating a private water market that's UK-wide behind your back. They made a mockery of devolution because they had to transfer power back to Cameron to allow him to do this. And they made a mockery of the general election because they told everybody in Britain, we don't do deal with Tories. Everybody in Britain can trust us. When they did a deal with David Cameron behind Scotland's back, weeks before the referendum, to create a UK water market with David Cameron.
So that even in the event, which was going to be unlikely because, as we've discussed before, certainly in my opinion, the referendum result exactly a year ago, of course, the 18th of September last year, the referendum result was fudged. The result, the ultimate result was so different from the exit polls as to, just be impossible. But of course, there was no way at the time that Scotland was going to be allowed to devolve from the UK. But even if it does at some future date, what they're going to make sure of now, of course, is that basically an independent Scotland is effectively totally economically dependent upon its relationship with the UK, when there is the distinct possibility that, given the appropriate opportunity, Scotland, of course, could become economically independent.
Well, Jim Sellers, one of the leading Yes campaigners, he demanded that we got our own currency and our own central bank. That was a lot of the reason people said no, was because Nicola and Alex said, no, we want Scotland tied to the Bank of England. What Nicola and Alex refused to tell the nation was George Osborne and Carney changed the Bank of England lending rules in June before the referendum to say they were now going to lend to casino bankers directly from the Bank of England to circumvent the new banking regulations. So casino bankers that have no deposits, that their assets lose their value overnight, which caused a financial crisis. George Osborne and Carney ripped up the Bank of England lending rules to say now casino bankers forevermore can transfer all their banking debt to the taxpayers of Britain to circumvent the new rules. Nicola and Alec knew this, and they said nothing to Scotland, and they wanted to tie Scotland to the Bank of England. So not only are they tied in with the British establishment to burn Scotland out under our feet, where Cameron's transferred 100% rights and interest to Scotland's coal so that they can do a toxic experiment in Scotland. SNP refused to put it in the moratorium. They want Scotland to be a guinea pig in this toxic UK experiment. They've sold out our water so that Scottish Water goes bankrupt, and the people know nothing about all these deals. And they've also tried to sell us out to the Bank of England, transferring casino banker states. And that's why Alex Salmond was being wined and dined by bankers during the general election. You didn't see him in the campaign trail. When the Financial Times reported Alex was being wined and dined by Merrill Lynch and other hedge funds and casino bankers, and there's a photo of him laughing. He's laughing at all of us because they are not in it for Scotland's people. It's always been said they're tartan Tories, and Cameron gave the referendum, not the SNP, but Cameron and the SNP used it to distract the people of Scotland from the deals they were doing to do toxic experiment in Scotland for unconventional gas. They're to do a deal to give Cameron our water when we got devolution to protect us, because 90% of Strathclyde voted to tell Thatcher, go to hell, you're not privatising our water. Nicola held an interview saying, I'm a child of Thatcher. Well, she sure bloody is, because she fulfilled Thatcher's dream, where she's just created a UK private water market.
Well, you know, when
during the referendum.
When in the run-up to the referendum, I offered my manifesto to Scotland and made the observation that, you know, the first thing that Scotland needed to do was to set up its own central bank, to establish its own currency, to establish a debt-free economy. And then it needed to nationalise the hydrocarbons industry. I mean, obviously, there's not quite the same revenue from that, but nonetheless, there is revenue. They should nationalise the hydrocarbons industry, nationalise Scottish Water, not just the company, but all of Scotland's water. The water in Scotland is quite possibly Scotland's most precious resource, and it certainly will be in the coming years. And sadly, just like the fishing industry of Ireland was gifted to the EU by corrupt politicians, it seems that Scotland's water has gone the same way. And once again, it doesn't look as though the Scottish politicians have acted in the interests of the Scottish people. Mel, we're going to take a short break, but stay there, come back and join us in part 3.
Shale gas is part of the future and we will make it happen.
I'm charged with, without lawful authority or excuse, obstructing the highway. Well, I believe I have lawful excuse.
We're going to take very great care that there is no damage to the water supply.
Gas at Barton Moss contaminated the well site. Then Rathlin Energy were responsible for considerable property damage as a result of their seismic testing.
There is a fishing lake which started to go down immediately following the detonation of these charges.
I think there's a huge amount of myths that are being put round in order to frighten people.
The first person that signed a well was the person that doomed us to this. An unconventional gas well isn't a pipe out of the ground. With it comes all of the drilling and the destruction. That's a hectare. Plus tracks, compressor stations, water holding ponds.
So we're right in the middle of the Australian bush here. Well, it was once bush.
We take a strip literally 520 kilometres for this one company. We sit on the Great Artesian Basin, one of the greatest water resources in the world, and they are allowed to deplete it and turn it to trash.
There used to be a beautiful green lawn with roses in it. 3 nights of rain, it was dead. Each time it rains, it just comes up black.
You're genuinely so scared of what is happening. It's untrustworthy and it's running out.
This is called a high point vent. That'll have everything in it.
The benzene, the toluene, the ethyl benzenes.
Everything.
When your nose is burning, your eyes are burning, and you got that terrible oily sort of taste, I said, you know, the flares are not, they're just venting. Then other times, it's like little fibres in your throat, you know, the flare is on.
The majority of people that have visited us, they say, how can you live there? You know.
Welcome back to part 3 of Fracking Nightmare. I'm speaking tonight with Mel Kelly, who joined me 3 weeks ago, and we put the cat amongst the pigeons in Scotland with the discussion on the SNP agenda for unconventional gas exploitation, and particularly underground coal gasification. Now, Mel, earlier, I believe today, a report was released. And this is the Underground Coal Gasification Economic Impact Assessment, produced by Bigger Economics. And of course, the report is produced for Clough Natural Resources. Now, this is available online. But Mel, for me, the final paragraph of that report absolutely gives the game away. And what that says is, alternatively, in other words, it had previously been talking about the syngas from underground coal gasification being used for industry and domestic resources. But it says, alternatively, syngas could be used to provide a feedstock for the chemicals sector. In other words, INEOS. If used in this way, underground coal gasification could play a fundamental role in safeguarding 4,800 jobs which are reliant on the Scottish chemical sector. This represents an economic contribution to the Scottish economy of between 307 and 732 million per year. Now, we know that Jim Ratcliffe of INEOS is adept at holding the politicians to ransom. He's done it quite adeptly and managed to manipulate his own way. And this looks to me as though, you know, this is exactly what the game plan is. You know, INEOS are in bed with iGas. We know that when the moratorium is lifted, the likelihood is that this whole central belt of Scotland is likely to be licensed. If we just bring this up on the screen here, you see that, I mean, literally, I mean, this is, you know, Scotland's residential belt. I mean, you couldn't you couldn't have sought out a more densely populated area. I mean, Scotland's not as densely populated as parts of England, but nonetheless, that is where the bulk of Scotland's population reside, right across that M8 corridor, and that is the INEOS IGAS Clough target area. So that report is basically the script, isn't it, Mel?
Yep, basically, where 80% of the Scottish population live, we have to have fracking, we have to be coal bed methane extraction, and then Clough's report reveals he wants to set 108 different coal fires underground, each of them burning for 5 years, with all that fracking gas and everything, where you've already got Australia saying, look, even 4 tiny fires burning a few thousand tonnes of coal has caused the biggest environmental disaster in Australia's history. And Clough decides, well, and the SNP, because they refused to put it in the moratorium, let's set 108 coal fires underground, let them burn for 5 years, and let hydrogen, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide pollute 80% of people in Scotland. And then once a coal fire basically explodes, as has happened in the trial in the EU, and all the methane explodes, and the chemical plant explodes, and the methane tanks from America explode, well, that's all right then, because the British establishment are the ones that are going to be making millions out of this. They don't care about Scotland. They don't care about 80% of Scotland's population, and neither do the SNP, because they've said it will not be included in the moratorium.
I mean, if everyone was looking at if you like, prima facie evidence that the government is not interested in the well-being of their population, this is really it. And of course, over the next few days, we have a number of events coming up. Of course, the INEOS exhibition tour, which is preempting the forthcoming elections. And of course, this is part of their box-ticking exercise to say that they have visited with local communities and convinced those communities that everything that they're going to do is safe. And the next meeting is this. In fact, there's 2 this week. There's one on Wednesday at Bowness, the Bowness Library, and that runs from 3 to 8 p.m. And then the following day in Erth, in the community hall in Erth. And you know, if I'm in the vicinity, I may actually try and drop in on the Erth meeting and just see what. I'm sure that Jim Ratcliffe won't be there, and I'll just see what his cohorts have to say. In reality, of course, the likelihood of anybody being in those exhibitions who has any experience of unconventional gas exploitation is slim to none. It'll be PR people who literally will just regurgitate what they have been told. And of course, because they can only regurgitate what they've been told, they can't really be accused of lying, can they? Whereas if there were any engineering personnel there, anyone with any experience of unconventional gas exploitation, then they might find it a little bit difficult to justify an industry that has such a proven track record of contamination and devastation. Well, the following day, apparently Voices from the Gas Fields is being screened. Oh, no, that's the wrong location. That says Chester. It's actually being screened in Falkirk at the Dawson Centre, I think it is. It's on David's Loan anyway, but you can find the information on any of the anti-fracking Facebook pages in Scotland, and that will commence at 7:30. After the film, which is 1 hour, then there'll be a question and answer session. Then on Saturday, I'll be with you, Mel, in person. We'll have the opportunity to actually shake each other's hand. And we'll be at Holyrood, and this is the rally in Scotland, Get the Frack Out of Scotland. which will kick off at 1 o'clock and run through till 5 o'clock. And this is obviously a great social opportunity, a great networking opportunity, and an opportunity to let the Scottish media, if they deign to show up, that the opposition to this insidious industry is mounting exponentially. And then the following day, Mel, we have the event in the Thistle Hotel, Glasgow. And, after some discussion, we agreed to make this a free event because this is a one-shot deal. And this is an opportunity for all of those who are becoming increasingly concerned about the invasions of privacy and insidious legislation that's now being introduced in Scotland. They can come along and see the evidence for themselves. And I can categorically assure you that evidence will be presented at this event that will have jaws on the floor. It will be impossible to deny. So I do hope that a few MSPs come along. Somehow I have a feeling that we won't be seeing too many SNP members. Although we won't, actually, let me rephrase that. We may see a number of SNP members, but I don't think we're going to see too many SNP members of the Scottish Parliament, because members of the SNP are still under the illusion that it is the grassroots membership that sets policy. That's correct, Mel?
Yeah, the SNP, like other parties, basically use members to fund their careers when they don't want members actually being able to have a say on policy, and they use their NEC to actually say that well, it's okay, we're not allowed to talk about that at conference. I mean, they even had a member of the leading body within the SNP stating on Sunday that nobody within the SNP is talking about independence. He's an MEP. He's in control of policy. The SNP members, yes, campaigners all across Scotland, we want to talk about independence. And the only place it's not been discussed, I've been told, is within the SNP leadership.
Incredible. So you're going to be sharing this with the audience on Sunday. And give us a quick insight as to other issues that you're going to be presenting. You're going to be talking about underground coal gasification, and you're going to be talking about Scotland's water.
Yep, basically it's to present the evidence of the trials worldwide, all the scientific evidence on the dangers of underground coal gasification, why no other country in the world has done it, because the trials have been so toxic. That's the evidence that the Scottish Parliament refused to reveal, hiding behind there's negligible risk. But I've got all the evidence, all the links, all the videos that give the evidence the SNP leadership don't want us to have. And then all the evidence on everything the SNP have been up to with Scotland's water, all the links to everything that's went on between both parliaments, which prove conclusively what I'm saying. And people have been saying, but I know nothing about this. And even when you mentioned it, I can't find anything online. That shows you the depth of deception between the SNP and the British establishment, who are all, and the hedge funds, who are all going to be the beneficiaries, because these are the people that control the press. So that's why it's so important that online media are the people that are revealing the truth, because the British media, of course, is in complete control of the British establishment.
Absolutely. Now, Mel, I'm really looking forward to the event. I know I'm going to learn a lot from both yourself and from Pippa. We are going to ensure that there is ample time for question and answer. Like I said, let's hope the media and the politicians deign to attend, because they might just learn something. Mel, it's an absolute pleasure to talk to you again. I'm really looking forward to meeting you later this week. So thanks very much for everything that you're doing. And, and by the way, thanks for your contribution in England too, because you are a classic example of one of the many, many people amongst communities right throughout the UK that are working to shut down this insidious industry. And if it weren't for your efforts, then 5 Quarters may still be pursuing their licence in Warwickshire. And of course, they've walked away from that. And that is in no small way thanks to your efforts.
So that was Clough.
Oh, sorry, it was Clough, not 5 Quarters. Thank you for the correction. And okay, so that's it from me. And next week, Fracking Nightmare and Humanity vs Insanity will go out on Tuesday night, so that I don't have to break any speed limits coming down the M6 from Scotland. So thanks very much, and see you all next week.